I found this article, as you know, you and I have done this before, and this is advice for women who are starting to date again after 50 about, some of the top things that mature men want.
Did you push record?
Thanks so much for joining us today on Second Act TV. I'm so happy to welcome Robert Manni back, the host of Guys Guy Radio. Robert, thank you for joining me again.
Oh, my pleasure, Silk. I love to be here. Love to help out as best I can.
Well, let's help out today. Another fun discussion about dating after 50. And I should say that you are the author of the Guys Guide to Love, and that really ties in well with today's discussion because your goal there was to educate women about what men really think, and you do it well in the story. I love the book. We'll link to it, and that's kind of the what I want to do today. I found this article, as you know, you and I have done this before. It was published by a site called Single and Mature. It's actually a dating site out of the UK, and this is advice for women who are starting to date again after 50 about some of the top things that mature men want. And while, again, nothing is really earth-shattering here, some points are really important, I think, interesting to talk about. So let's get right into it. The first one I want to talk about, like I said, we'll link to it so you can read this yourself, but that mature men are more interested in relationships than their younger counterparts were, or what you as a woman might have been used to when last time you were on the dating scene. What do you say?
I would have to agree with that. It can be lonely guy time if you're a man over 50 who has been maybe married for a long period of time and is newly single, and they might not be comfortable with the whole getting back into the dating game, if you will, the swinging swingles scene. And I can understand that sentiment coming out that men at this point may be looking for relationships because it's probably more comfortable and easier for them.
Mhm. I think that probably we all want a relationship to some extent. I mean that we're social beings, so that makes sense. So let's go with, yeah, men in their 50s more so than when they were younger want a relationship, and that's good news for women looking for that. To build on that, at this point, I find interesting. Men in their later years want to rekindle in romance, that they're really focused on romance. For me, I find that hard to believe, but they even quote a study, the Romantic Beliefs Scale, a study that compared gender role orientation and looked at gender. Anyway, they found that men are more romantic than women.
Well, I think that men have an interest in romance because when they're younger, they probably don't have the romantic skills that are required to be a good partner out there. And then they finally realize that, wow, I've been missing out. And I think it's the inverse may happen where, okay, women are always going to appreciate romance, but I think over time, women get more practical about relationships and men get more dreamy and romantic about it because maybe they haven't done the romantic thing and they have an idealistic viewpoint as to what they would like their new relationship to be, assuming they've been in a partnership or they've been married or maybe they've just been single and alone, that romance sounds like a good thing.
Yeah, it said, to the points, I briefly looked up the study, and they said that men are more apt to believe in love at first sight and finding the one. Yeah, maybe.
I think that's part of that optimism, that dreaminess, where they idealism, and there's nothing wrong with that. And love at first sight. Men are visual, so first sight may be
Yeah.
something, not their brain, this brain talking, but the other brain might be doing have some participation in that decision. But what was the second part of it? Love at first sight and
And finding the one.
well, sure. Finding the one is part of that whole idealism about romance and a relationship and trying to do the things right that maybe when they were younger and they were running around and sleeping around and rumpling the sheets and having a big time and maybe not treating women that well, then they realize if they've been alone and like things have changed and now the hairline's receding and the belly's going out and maybe they lost their job or whatever, that, the comfort and the romance, that all the good stuff about relationships is something that they yearn for.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and
So
that goes to the next point, or one or the other one. I'm going to skip around because I definitely don't want to miss number four. But that men in their 50s want more than just sex.
well, that's kind of a loaded statement. And again, I don't want to say the why for all of these, why the results are coming that way. But of course, I think any man, unless there, maybe if there's in the hookup culture, you're in your 20s and maybe early 30s, yeah, you don't necessarily need a relationship. But I think when you get older, you realize that when you have intimacy with somebody, there is an exchange of energy, and you want to be careful about who you're doing things with, particularly in today's climate. So yeah, I can totally understand men saying they want more than sex. And if you interview the man on the street,
Yeah.
and if it's a woman interviewing him and says, "Do you want just sex in a relationship?" Do you think the guy's really going to tell the truth if that's the case? I don't think
No.
so. So you have to skew in the whole dynamics of interviewing and how research is done.
Right, exactly. And I'm not saying that I believe that's all men want because I know different. And as you do age, you do become more mature. And there is such a thing, being in a loving relationship and exploring your emotions. And yeah, I want to believe that that's important. So now here, this point I loved. This is worthy of a discussion. Older men love it when you bring out the masculinity within them. I mean, does that brings out or puts us in our age, doesn't it? That
Well,
statement alone.
Well, I've actually had a friend who was divorced, and I asked him why, and the thing he talked about most was his wife wasn't laughing at his jokes anymore. And he didn't feel valued in the relationship, and he didn't feel like he had a role, and he didn't feel that masculinity, I guess. And so I totally understand that. Is that right? I don't know. I think it's different for every individual, but sure, men want to feel like men. But to me, if you're a guy, it's not a woman who's going to make you feel like a man. You have to feel like a man yourself. You have to start right there, like we all do. We have to start with ourselves. And it's nice if somebody else finds you masculine, but you can't expect your woman to, you know, play a game to make you feel like a real man. I mean, if it's true, if it's real that you do that for them, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
But it has to start with you. It can't come from your partner.
I agree. And that's why I thought, again, this is advice for women. Is this good advice? Because I certainly wouldn't want a woman to, just be phony all of a sudden to, it has to be real. So I was questioning it in that sense. But they make a really interesting point. It says that it's been observed that older men cling to the 1950s and 1960s masculine value. And I wanted to ask that, or and put it out to our audience. I would love to hear your input on this. Is that true? They this was also some sociological study, and they said like the four things are no sissy stuff. And my notes here: the no sissy stuff. Men are to avoid being feminine. The big wheel. Men must gain and retain respect and power. For everything in everything they do. The sturdy oak. Men are to be strong. The strong silent type, and give them hell. Men are to be tough, adventurous, and never give up. And this is really challenging as you age to keep that up.
Right. So I think that every man is different. I personally don't want those values from the 1950s anymore. There was a lot of good things about them because they were predictable. It was a patriarchal society. Society is moving to a matriarchal society. It's long overdue. Whereas women have been achieving things and finally getting recognition. Men are finding themselves at a crossroads where they don't really know. You have young guys, they're caught between the MMA and manscaping, and older guys don't know where their masculinity is anymore because they've defined themselves by societal norms of their paycheck and their job and their power. So when you take those things away and say, we're going to redefine things, it makes them uncomfortable. So that's what it's about. It's like there's a comfort level when they go back and say, okay, this is how my dad did it or whatever, even if he was wrong in a lot of ways. It's at least I know that. I don't know what the new rules are. If I cry, I'm a blubberpuss. If I don't cry, I'm insensitive. How do I deal with this? What is my divine feminine inside? How do I get in touch with that? How do I talk about my feelings without feeling weak? And there's a lot of challenges because this is a time, it's never been a better time for men to be whoever they want to be, Silka. But it's also a time where it's never been less clear who men really are. So I understand where the older guys are coming from and totally understandable. And I think all of us, women and other guys, have to help out with that because it's too easy. Change comes hard for men.
Yeah. Yeah. The 2 points here that kind of not contradict, but, and they even mention that, while we say one thing and then this is another bit of advice, but that men in their later years value ambition in a woman, and they like funny or a fun woman, that they don't, to your point there with your friend, my wife isn't laughing at my jokes anymore, that as you get older they appreciate a humorous woman versus being the center of attention, and being funny.
That I found those two interesting because you wouldn't think they would fit in. They were kind of contrarian to the other comments, but
Right.
I guess that's a good thing. Now, I guess they want a woman to be financially independent. Maybe that's the subtext there. And fun means they can have fun together instead of, because probably they're not hanging out with their guys, with the dudes anymore. So they want to be with somebody they can relate to and have some fun. So I think it's, again, I hate to go into the reasons why, but I understand where that answer is coming from, and it makes perfect sense. And there's nothing wrong with it. If guys are saying that, that's fine. Now, what is the motivation behind it? That's another thing.
Yeah, exactly. I want to. God, time goes by so fast all the time. But there are a couple more. And I think this is really, really important to me. Dating advice, period. But that mature men like women who have similar values than them. I think that goes for both parts. The similar values, that has really been demonstrated, especially in the last couple of years, what we've been through. I believe it's really important. What do you think?
Totally 100% agreement. I think at any age, anytime you're getting into a relationship, I'm not talking about just dating, but if you're going to get into a relationship with somebody, excuse me, having the same values is incredibly important for the long-term success. Because if you find that you have a different viewpoint about family or money or just relationships themselves, how you treat people, etc., it's going to become a huge factor.
Right.
And now when you have all of this divide, whether it's the election or the pandemic or whatever, there's everything's 50-50, it seems like. And it's really, we have to all challenge ourselves to say, how can I be empathetic and not judge, even though I have my own point of view?
Yeah, exactly. I know if I was back on the dating scene, and what I've observed, the comments we've received, I couldn't imagine starting a relationship if we are totally off the board in our values. I mean, what, you're just asking for trouble. I
Yeah.
think. What do you think, as in our viewers? I'd love to hear that, because I think that's really, really important. Well, I mean, we could talk about this forever. Again, I'm going to link to this article. See what you think. I think it's great for men to comment. Yeah, this is true. No, it's not. This is, and then for women to really think about this, especially if you're coming back on the dating scene. I guess in summary, and as they say here too, the good news is that if you're looking for a long-term relationship in your later years, you will be pleased to know that that most mature men are looking for the exact same thing. Your closing words?
I would say, for all the ladies out there, don't change for a man. Be yourself, be authentic, and number one, love yourself. Because if you don't love yourself, it's going to be hard for anybody else to love you. So that's all good stuff coming from men, but be yourself, and you have to do what you have to do. You come first.
Yeah, I agree. Robert, thank you again. We'll link to all your information. Guys Guy Radio, a great, great, great radio show. I love it. And we will see you next time on Second Act TV.
Thank you, Silka. Thanks, everybody.
Bye. If you haven't already done so, please be sure to subscribe to our channel. The button is right over here. Just click on through to YouTube. When you see the little bell right next to the subscribe button, hit that too. We'll notify you every time we start a new video. See you next time.